a man, who they say he murdered 3. Strange things have happened there. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.
And welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James. Organic Man Coffee Trike is the best coffee you can find anywhere. I've had coffee from all over the world. I've had some coffee that was nearly as good, and some that was so bad it wasn't worth throwing out. It was actually the stuff coming out of the crankcase of a old truck. I imagine the stuff probably was sitting on the burner for a week or two. Julio has the best coffee in the universe. 4501 McPherson, home of the nectar of the gods. If you can't get there from there, try organicmancoffeetrike.shop. You can find all of his best coffee and order it so you don't even have to leave the house. Only real coffee can be found at the Organic Man. Julio sent me a video about a very weird temple in India that had some of the most intricate carvings imaginable. There were pillars that stretched all the way to the ceiling, but they didn't actually set on the floor. You could pass a sheet of paper directly under them. One solid chunk of rock that had been carved by people with real talent. I thought this might make a really good show, so I started looking into it, and of course I got sidetracked by other bizarre temples. I am not so much in love with India as fascinated by their history. At one time, India was a world power. They had vast treasures and wealth. They had what passed for modern technology of the time. There are reports of flying machines and weapons of mass destruction. Along came the British with the East India Company. Once the country was stripped of most of their goods, the British simply packed up and left. And as a parting gift, they split the country in two over religious differences. The blame doesn't rest solely with the British. A bunch of the folks from India allowed this to happen because they were let in on the scam. I usually like to look into and talk about things that I find interesting. With so much history, there is to be a lot of really bizarre things going on. The information I read was translated from Hindi to English by some computer program. Some of it is going to be wrong because computers are simply machines that don't really think yet. Mehendipur Palaji Temple is in Mehendipur village of the Dausa district of Rajasthan. Boy, I hope I pronounced those correctly. The temple is famous for ridding people of evil spirits and with black magic. There are reports of curing incurable diseases as well. Millions of people visit the temple yearly. The place is usually overcrowded on Tuesdays because Tuesday is the day of Lord Hanuman, the god the temple is dedicated to. Tirupati Balaji is the richest and one of the most popular Hindu temples dedicated to Lord Vishnu. Most Hindus think that Balaji is the name of Lord Vishnu only. But in many parts of India, Lord Hanuman is also called Balaji. The child form of Lord Hanuman is known as Bala. Despite being dedicated to Lord Hanuman, the temple is known as the Mihandarpur Balaji Temple. I do have listeners in India. I hope y'all aren't screaming and throwing things at your computer the way I said those names. The temple is also known as Gata Mahendapur Temple because it is located in a valley formed by these two mountains. The temple is about 1,000 years old. There was a dense forest in the place where the temple was to be built. One night, the ancestor of the priest Mahant, or the priest of the temple, Genshapurji Maharaj, had a dream, and he started sleepwalking. He reached a weird place where he saw thousands of lamps being held up in the air by an army of soldiers. The head of the army stopped at a place, and he paid respect to it. Then the army marched on. The priest returned home. He then had another dream in which he saw three gods and a magnificent temple. He heard a voice that told him he was to serve the gods, but the priest wanted to ignore this. Kind of like what happened to what's his name with the whale, Jonah. Therefore, well, at least this guy didn't get eaten by a whale. Lord Balaji appeared before him and ordered him to go and serve. The next day, the priest told the villagers about his experience. The villagers dug at the place, and they found an idol of Lord Hanuman. They built a small temple and started worshiping in that location. Today, there are three idols of three principal deities in the temple. One is of Lord Hanuman. The second is Prithviraj Sarkar, and the third is Bhairava Ketwal. It is said none of these idols had been carved by man, but they were formed as part of the mountain. The idol of Lord Hanuman is carved into the mountain and hence is unmovable. It has a hole in the left part of the chest from which water flows continuously. This water is collected in a tank at its feet, and then it is distributed amongst the worshippers. Some devotees believe that this is the perspiration of Lord Hanuman. The idol is situated in such a way that it is facing the idols of Lord Rama and the goddess Sita. There are some unwritten rules to follow before or after you visit this temple. The visitor should eat only vegetables, with the exception of onions and garlic. No drinking of alcohol for at least a week before visiting. You are not to talk to or touch any strangers because there might be possessed people around the temple and it could affect you. The spirit might choose to jump from them into you. Do not give or take anything from anyone. It is considered to be prasadam, a religious offering only. You must only eat the prasadam inside the temple. You cannot take any of these things outside. You also cannot bring anything into the temple with you in a form of sacrifice. You have to pick that up inside the temple only. If you are leaving the temple, you are not to turn and look back, like that woman escaping from Sodom. Except they don't say you'll turn into a pillar of salt, they just say don't do it. Those who do argy in the temple should not eat onions, garlic, or non-vegetable food, and they are not to drink alcohol for 41 days after visiting the temple. Argy basically means a request or a prayer in Hindi. You're going there to say a prayer for a friend, a relative, or even yourself. These are the rules you're to follow. You cannot offer anything from outside to the gods of the temple. You're not to apply hair oil or use any kind of fragrant soap because evil spirits are attracted to these fragrances. In most Hindu temples, the priests offer prasadam, religious offerings, to the devotees, but this temple has different rules. You have to buy your own prasadam from a shop inside the building. From that, some part is given back to the devotees. The best comparison I could come up with is it's kind of like visiting Disney World. Once you're there, you're stuck paying for everything unless you want to leave and then come back. Try smuggling food into the Magic Kingdom, and you'll wind up as one of the hosts at the Haunted Mansion instead of a guest. Do they really have some strict rules at Disney World? Yeah. Many shopkeepers sell black colored balls that are made of food. The devotees buy them because refusing to is considered bad karma. The devotee must pass it around their body 5 times and then throw it into a ritual fire. The Manhandapur Balaji temple is well known for its exorcism practices, attracting many individuals seeking relief from spiritual afflictions. Those appointed by the temple authorities assist these individuals in getting rid of their possessing spirits. The techniques employed at the temple may seem a bit harsh. You think an exorcism in the U.S. is bad, you should see them at this temple. During the rituals, many individuals are restrained with chains or by having rocks piled around them, and then they are beaten, either with sticks or by the people's hands. They're neither given food nor water the entire time that the exorcism is going on. Ouchie. In the 13th century, Kuldahara village was established by the Paliwal Brahmins. These people migrated from Pali region of Marwar to settle in the area near Jaisalmer. They were known to have advanced knowledge of agricultural practices, especially in the desert terrain. They established a total of 84 villages that were connected to each other with well-built and maintained roads. Kalduhara village was one of the more prominent towns. The village was located approximately 10 miles from Jaisalmer city and has a north-south orientation. The layout of the village is fairly simple. It has 3 main roads that are crossed by several smaller roads running east and west. The Paliwal Brahmins used their knowledge of water management and irrigation to grow their crops. This led to them enduring the heat and also facing the harsher conditions of the desert. They built canals and reservoirs to support their agricultural activities, and their everyday livelihoods. Apart from agriculture, the people of Kaldahara also had animals and had a decent trade relationship with all the other towns. The residents built a temple to honor the mother goddess of, or the earth goddess, who was bestowing them with their gift. Kaldahara village was once a beautiful place. It was a nice place to visit and work. Something happened in the 19th century that changed all that. Nobody knows for sure what took place, but the entire village packed up and left. The town has a wall that completely encloses it. Well, this wall began to crumble over time. The folks living on the outside of the village began to rebuild this wall as if to keep something in. Locals around the village believe the place is cursed and nobody can stay there without being possessed by the spirits inside. There is a temple in Kaldahara that is dedicated to the mother goddess who people say used to protect the residents while they still lived there. Just like the rest of the place, the temple is also in ruins. It has a simple style of architecture and was built from sandstone. There are several legends and local stories that say the place is haunted and nobody should enter after sundown. There are two main legends that people will tell you. In the 19th century, the king's prime minister was Salim Ali. One day he was traveling through the village when he spotted the beautiful daughter of the head of the village. She was a young, beautiful Hottentot. The stuff dreams are made of. Okay, that's a Maltese Falcon reference, but still, she was a hottie. If you ever read Bloom County, that's where I got that reference. A Hottentot. The Prime Minister was quite taken by her looks, and he decided that she was going to be his bride. Well, he let the villagers know he wanted to marry the girl. The girl said, nay, nay. She was not interested in getting hitched to some old bureaucrat. The villagers and the girl's father told Ali he was out of luck. Salim Ali wasn't used to folks telling him no. Probably never heard the word when he was growing up. He told them that he was still going to marry her despite her or their wishes. Threats were made, names were yelled, and the horse you rode in on. Ali was back in the capital when the villagers all packed their things and split. When he returned to try more intimidation, he found an empty village. This was when he discovered the village hadn't simply left, they had placed a curse on the town on their way out. Some say the haunted abandoned village has nothing to do with a love story. Not really a love story, more like a lust story. Salim Ali was a brutal administrator. He imposed high taxes on the people of Kaldahara, and owing to the harsh conditions of the desert, it was hard for them to pay such inflated taxes. So they decided to leave. Being really pissed off at the prime minister and how their lives were being disrupted, they cursed their former home that no one else would be able to live in it. People who lived in the villages that surround Kaldahara say there's always an eerie atmosphere around the place, even in the daytime. Many say they hear voices, conversations, even though nobody ever stays there. They have seen apparitions of people in traditional attire, a style that was common in the 13th to the 19th century. They say it is normal to feel a sense of unease when you step into the place, and you will also encounter cold spots even in the scorching heat of the day. During the night, people hear whispers from the village. They've seen lights and sounds that shouldn't be there owing to the ruined state of the place. People believe the departed souls of the villagers who once resided there have come back to relive their memories. They are said to walk the roads of the village or even carry out normal day to day tasks. On a new moon, locals say they've heard chanting echoing from the ruins. For the locals that live nearby, it is forbidden to enter Kaldahara village or to walk by the place after sunset. It is said that this will invite a lot of unrest into your life, as well as paranormal encounters that nobody wants to deal with. They also fear the wrath of the spirits that wander the place. There is no established rule that people can't go into the village after sunset. Unlike other haunted places like the Bangad Fort, the government has not imposed any restrictions. The locals strongly recommend people don't stay there, but if you're going to, they're not going to stop you. Several paranormal investigators have visited Kuldahara village at night. They've found electromagnetic disturbances, sudden drops in temperature, and some unexplained figures have been captured in photographs. They also detected whispers and sounds on their audio equipment. A ziggurat is a lot like a pyramid, only they have stepped sides leading all the way to the top. These massive buildings, with their towering facades and deliberate orientations, were vital links between people and their gods in ancient world. Ziggurats have developed a mysterious reputation throughout history, and they've become the subject of a lot of paranormal beliefs, as well as supernatural activity. Ziggurats produced a terraced pyramid effect that dominated the terrain of ancient Mesopotamia. Derived from the Akkadian zigguratu, which means to build high, the word ziggurat described these enormous constructions that could reach heights of up to 300 feet. At its peak, every ziggurat housed a temple shrine, reachable only by a sequence of ramps or steps, either inside or outside the construction, usually covered in vivid glazed bricks that came in red, white, and blue. Kind of patriotic, except the U.S. wasn't around back then. Usually covered with these different colored bricks, the ziggurats would have created a brilliant display visible for miles around the Mesopotamian landscape. The history of ziggurats date back thousands of years. The first ones showed up in the late 4th millennium BC in the ancient Sumer culture, which was in what is now southern Iraq. Regarded as the oldest urban society in the world, the Sumerians built these massive buildings as temples honoring their god. Among the notable examples are the 14th century BC ziggurat of Dur-Igalzu and the Great Ziggurat of Nice simple name there to pronounce, And then you've got Kurigalzu. Why can't they all be nice, short, easy to pronounce names? Which were erected around 2100 BC and dedicated to the moon god Nona. Ziggurats grew more complex as Mesopotamian civilization developed around the Akkadian Babylonian, and Assyrian periods. Their height was attained with Nebuchadnezzar II's reconstruction of the fabled Tower of Babel in the 6th century BC. Combining administrative, ecclesiastical, and financial purposes, these buildings functioned both literally and symbolically as the core of their cities. Originally intended as massive pedestals to raise temples near the heavens, where the gods were supposed to live, ziggurats served primarily as sacred monuments. Mesopotamian cosmology maintained that these buildings served as bridges between the divine and the mortal domains, allowing the gods to descend to earth. Acting as middlemen, the priests would climb to the top of the temple to carry out holy rites, make offerings to the god, and translate divine will via several kinds of divination. The ziggurat's towering height reflected Mesopotamian mythology cosmic mountain, mythological cosmic mountain, linking heaven and earth and the underworld. These vertical axis was supposed to let divine energy and communication between the worlds flow, hence defining the ziggurat as the center of supernatural force in the city. Beginning in ancient times with accounts of unusual events connected with these buildings, ziggurats have developed a spooky reputation over history. Sumerian and Babylonian writings characterize ziggurats as sites of the physical manifestation of gods, where prophetic visions took place and where cosmic energy might be guided by ceremonial practices. Many ziggurats are astronomically aligned with celestial bodies, especially in their corner orientations to the cardinal directions, which has led to the idea about their use as ancient observatories, linking the astrology and the cosmic energy. Some traditions say ziggurats' many levels represented the different worlds that priests could enter through altered states of consciousness, spiritually rising as they physically rose. Modern paranormal beliefs have built on these old connections and included ziggurats in a vast range of ghostly stories. Some modern physics and energy workers assert, not physics, psychics. Modern psychics and energy workers assert that the remains of ziggurats still radiate strong electromagnetic fields that are detectable with modern electronic equipment and usable for healing or spiritual awakening. Others contend that the exact mathematical ratios applied in ziggurat buildings produced resonance chambers that enhanced psychic skills, enabled contact with non human beings, or produced portals to other dimensions, with each level standing for a different state of awareness that initiates could reach via ceremonial practices within these holy places. The stepped design has been understood as a metaphorical depiction of consciousness being expanded. Some paranormal investigators have suggested that ziggurats, with their unusual building materials and geometric shapes, served as ancient power plants, capturing natural energy. Advocates of these ideas refer to the bitumen used in a ziggurat building, is speculating speculating that it might have been an electrical insulator, while the copper and the gold parts might have been conductors in an energy system. According to some archaeological viewpoints, the ziggurats would have included technology that is now lost to history, perhaps even extraterrestrial, that allowed interaction with entities from other worlds or realms. These explanations draw attention to the ongoing mystery and the appeal that these buildings inspire among people fascinated with old anomalies and secret history. Over millennia, ziggurats have shaped architecture, religious activities, and esoteric traditions, affecting much more than their actual remains. From the Buddhist stupas of Asia to the Mayan temples of Mesoamerica, their stepped pyramid design suggests either cultural transmission or separate creation of similar cosmological ideas in many civilizations worldwide. Giorgio Tsoukalos would say clearly aliens. Modern occult techniques have included ziggurat symbols in ceremonial magic, where practitioners create ritual environments depending on the ziggurat concept to enable astral transit and contact with higher entities. The idea of rising degrees of consciousness, expressed by the tiers of the ziggurat, appeals to many mystical traditions that outline phases of spiritual growth and initiation. With stepped buildings rising in modern skylines all throughout the world, frequently inspired by the mystical relevance of their ancestors, the ziggurat's architectural impact permeates current architecture. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon possibly were connected with a ziggurat, combined with the human need for natural beauty, with massive buildings and having inspired many terraced garden designs throughout history. Ziggurats show a remarkable junction of real history and paranormal stories, highlighting mankind's ongoing obsession with massive constructions reaching the skies. Scientific study of the excavation helped archaeologists unearth the historical facts of these ancient marvels. The paranormal aspects connected to ziggurats speak to the deeper human drive to find meaning and mystery in the success of our predecessors. Whether consider architectural wonders, religious centers, energy conductors, or interdimensional portals, ziggurats are evidence of mankind's ongoing yearning to reach beyond daily reality and interact with something apart from the physical world. The boys in the white lab coats try to make any paranormal association with ziggurats go away by ridiculing anybody bringing the subject up. When people begin to believe they have all the answers, they almost always show their ignorance. There can be questions without answers, but not answers without questions. Laughing at the competition only makes others pay more attention to what they're saying. Tara no Masakado, often called the first samurai, was born around 903 AD, and he was a descendant of the Emperor Kanmu. No, when used in a person's name, can mean of, as in the son of so and so. His grandfather, Prince Takamochi, was the son of the emperor. To mitigate the financial burden of supporting a large family, the emperor would occasionally demote some of his sons or grandsons. The emperor was considered to be a god, but he decreed that some of his descendants were simply mortals in order to save money. To distinguish the godly family from the commoners, the emperor gave Masakado the name Tara and made him a regular person. Tara no Masakado was born around what is now Ibaraka Prefecture, and he served in the imperial Heian court in Kyoto for a while before returning to his home in Shimosa Province, which is present-day Tokyo. Things began to get tense between members of the family, and soon the uncles were fighting with Tara. A few of Tara's own men decided to join these uncles. A lot of this was caused by land disputes as well as who should be in charge of the family. Being the son of the emperor had little effect, seeing as he'd been demoted to a common man. There might have been a girl involved as well. Some local Hottentot might have been smiling at the wrong guy, and this caused some hurt feelings. Long story short, Masakado proceeded to whip his uncles and took over their land and possessions. Having done so well against his family, Masakado decided to keep going, attacking and conquering some of the local provinces. Soon, Masakado was ruling 8 provinces. Lots of land and many subjects made his head swell a bit. Well, no, a lot. Masakado declared himself to be emperor as well. He gave himself the title Shino, which meant God or divine, telling everyone that God had mandated Masakado return to his rightful place. This was not real popular with the real emperor. He felt when he demoted someone, they stayed demoted, even if it was his own son. The emperor issued an imperial decree calling Masakado a rebel and an enemy of the state. He sent armies to crush the rebellion. In 940 AD, Tara no Masakado was killed in battle, the Battle of Kojima, when an arrow was fired and struck him in the head, fired by Fujiwara no Hidesato. Hidesato. Yeah, that guy. Fujiwara, I can pronounce that one. His severed head was then taken to Kyoto and displayed as a warning to other potential rebels. Legend says that after several months, Masakado's head, which was still perfectly preserved, opened its eyes and began to speak. It cursed the emperor and all who had betrayed him, and then it began to glow. The head lifted itself into the air and flew back towards his homeland in the east. As it flew, it spread plague and disaster wherever its shadow fell. The head eventually landed in what is now central Tokyo, in a small fishing village called Shibasaki. The villagers were terrified, but they built a shrine around the head in order to appease the angry spirit. The shrine has managed to survive despite people who say curses are just nonsense, and then they tried to remove the shrine and the head. They had more important, more lucrative ideas on what to do with that piece of real estate. There have been several attempts over the years to relocate or develop the site, and every single attempt has ended in disaster. 1923, the government tried to turn it into a park. The construction workers kept getting injured, and then the great Kanto earthquake struck. In 1940, exactly 1,000 years after Masakado's death, the government tried once more. This time they wanted to build government offices on the site. The construction chief died mysteriously, and several workers were seriously injured. The project was abandoned. In the 1960s, they tried to build a parking lot on the site of the head's shrine. Again, workers were injured and strange accidents kept happening. The project was scrapped. Today, the site is maintained as a small shrine, and major corporations in the area regularly make offerings to keep Masakado's spirit happy. Every morning, fresh flowers and offerings are placed at the shrine by local business people. They know better than to anger the first samurai. What makes Tara no Masakado so significant isn't just his legendary curse. He's considered the first true samurai because he was the first warrior to challenge the imperial system directly and create his own independent military government. His rebellion established many of the precedents that would later be followed by the shogun and other military rulers. He showed that it was possible for a warrior to seize power through military might rather than imperial appointment. In many ways, he paved the way for the rise of the samurai class and the military rule that would dominate Japan for the next 700 years. While his rebellion ultimately failed, his legend lives on. He became a symbol of resistance against tyranny and injustice, and his story has been retold countless times in Japanese literature, theater, and film. He's often portrayed as a tragic hero who stood up against a corrupt system, but was ultimately brought down by treachery and betrayal. His supernatural revenge serves as a warning to those in power: treat folks fairly or face the consequences. Tokyo wasn't always called Tokyo, and Godzilla didn't always show up to destroy the place. It used to be called Edo, and Edo literally means estuary or bay entrance. It was named after its location at the north of several rivers flowing into Tokyo Bay. Before it was Edo, the area was known as Musashi Province, and it was part of Masakado's territory. Frogs, those little green hopping critters seen in the wetlands, have a bizarre connection to the flying head. Frogs are often associated with returning home safely. There is a belief that if you carry a frog charm while on a trip, it will help you get back safely, or it will help you find lost items. They will return to you. The word for frog in Japanese is kairu, which sounds like the word kairu, which means to return. Probably mispronounced both of those, but I don't speak Japanese. I'll have to ask JJ for that one. When Masakado's head flew back to his homeland, he was like a frog returning home. Over 1,000 years later, his spirit still protects his former land. In Japanese culture, the connection between a person and their homeland can be strong that transcends death itself. That shrine still exists today and is known as the Kata Mihujin. It's one of the most important shrines in Tokyo, and it's dedicated to three different deities, one of whom is Tara no Masakado. He's worshipped there as a protector deity of Tokyo and as a god of business success and victory in battle. I wonder why nobody has ever made a movie of Masakado doing battle with Godzilla, since he's supposed to protect Tokyo. The shrine is particularly popular with businessmen and business owners who come to pray for success in their careers. There's also another shrine called Masakado Zuka, or Masakado's Mound, which is said to mark the exact spot where his head landed. The place is considered to be one of the most spiritually powerful and dangerous places in all of Japan. It's located right in the heart of the financial district, surrounded by skyscrapers and office buildings. Despite being incredibly valuable real estate, nobody dares build on it. And whether you see him as a hero or a villain probably depends on your perspective. One thing is certain, his legend continues to this day, both in the shrine where he's worshipped, as well as the skyscrapers that do not disturb his resting place. I found this next story poorly translated into English. I mean, very poorly. I had to guess at some of what it said simply because it didn't make any sense. Uh, I hope I got it straight. I don't need any Japanese spirits haunting me. A group of students were visiting Tokyo. As they moved about the city, they wound up in front of the Tara no Masakado Shrine, also known as the Flying Head Shrine. Being well educated students, is there really such a thing? I've met a few college students who really need to go back to high school, maybe even grade school. They did not believe in curses. Just about everybody in Tokyo and a lot who live in Japan know about the Masakado curse. The well educated students either hadn't heard it or thought it was just superstition. Knowing ancient curses were only believed by ignorant folks, they decided to film themselves doing some not very respectful things in front of the shrine. They danced and cavorted about, hoping to create a TikTok video that would then go viral. They also left some trash on the shrine, showing how they were immune to such nonsense. I imagine alcohol was probably involved. A few insults were directed at the shrine before the students decided to move on and see what else they could see. The students eventually made their way back to their hotel. One of them wanted to see how well their soon to be TikTok monster video came out, so he watched the footage. To his great disappointment, the video was all out of focus. So much for creating a world sensation. No million clicks for them. Once back home, the student went and checked out the video one last time before deleting it. Oddly enough, the video was now clear. There they were, acting like a bunch of fools in front of the Flying Head Shrine. In the background were a bunch of what looked like faces, all glaring at the camera. This had to be some kind of a lens flare or something, or maybe the memory card was bad. The students felt maybe they could post the video anyway. It did look okay, except for those faces in the background, and actually that might add to the TikTok value. The friends all watched politely when asked, but all said that there were no faces in the background. All they saw were the students making fools of themselves in front of the shrine. This got the students to thinking, Either their friends were messing with them, but they were all saying the same thing, or maybe they were all seeing things, which also didn't make any sense. They even hooked the cell phone up to a computer and tried to enlarge the images. The students saw angry faces, but nobody else did. The next day or so, one of the students was involved in a bizarre accident resulting in his death. A few days later, another died of an undiagnosed illness. The coincidences had to be more than just that. The students hesitantly watched the video again. This time, there were fewer faces in the background. A careful count showed 2 faces were no longer there. Fear began to eat away at the survivors. One chose to stay in his room, refusing to leave or speak to anyone. After a few days, he had simply vanished. No one, including his family, knew where he'd gotten to. Immediately after this, another face vanished from the background. This story is kind of shaky. I couldn't find any names or a copy of the video, but then again, would I want to watch it? I saw that movie twice, and I saw the Japanese version as well, and I read the book. It's not actually a cursed video, and I never showed any disrespect to Masakado or his shrine, but still, I do not run with scissors. Yes, I'm referring to the movie The Ring. Whatever actually happened to these students? Did it actually happen? I couldn't find any clear proof or disproof. Even the most outlandish stories sometimes are true. As far as I could tell, like I said, I couldn't find any proof one way or the other. Next time you're walking past an old shrine, maybe it would be best to show the right amount of respect. You don't want to be one of those people, do you? Borgvattnet Vicarage was built back in 1876 in Sweden. The first ghost stories came to surface in 1927 when Vicar Nils Hedlund wrote about it in a letter. His mother, Marta, had died in the house in 1907 during childbirth. His father, Peer, couldn't face the fact that his wife had passed away, and he buried her in the backyard. When the locals found out a couple of days later, they demanded he dig her up and bury Marta in the cemetery like everyone else. Peer agreed, but the next day the whole Hedlund family had disappeared, along with the body of Marta. Nils Hedlund had come back to live at the vicarage after his father had died. He saw all of his laundry being pulled from the drying rack in the garden. There was no wind that day, and he could clearly see the laundry was being pulled off the line. He wasn't the last person to be affected by these hauntings. 1930, Hedlund's successor experienced something strange as well. Vicar Rudolf Tongden saw a lady dressed in gray inside the house. She was walking slowly towards him through the big hall before turning towards the expedition room, now known as the office, where the vicar used to work. He wanted to talk to this woman and ask her what she was doing inside his house, but when he got to the expedition room, there was nobody there. Otto Lindgren and his wife moved into the vicarage in 1936. They never saw an apparition, but they heard lots of paranormal experiences. They would hear footsteps walking through the house, and doors would be opened and closed as if somebody was moving from room to room. They sometimes saw somebody walking towards the front of the house, followed by a knock on the door. When they went to open the front door, well, there was nobody there. This was not Ding Dong Ditch. There was no place in front of the house for anyone to hide. Mrs. Lundgren had a strange encounter in the kitchen. She was home alone one day when she heard music coming from behind a closed door. She opened the kitchen door and the music suddenly stopped. The same thing happened again when Otto had come home. Again they heard music in the kitchen, but when they checked it out, the sound would stop. Inga Floden, the diocese secretary, stayed over at Borgvatten Vicarage in 1941 while on a business trip. She slept in the guest room and woke up at 3 a.m., feeling as if she were being watched. She must have thought she was only dreaming when she saw three ladies gazing at her from the couch right opposite of the bed. When she turned on the light, the ladies were still there, but she could see right through them. She had plenty of time to take a good look at these three women. One lady was dressed all in black. One had a purple dress, and the third was wearing gray. All three looked kind of sad, especially the lady in gray. Two of them had their hands in their laps, but the third one was knitting. At some point she must have dozed off again. The next day she didn't speak of what she had seen, but later she did admit to having a late night visitation. Vicar Eric Lindgren moved into the vicarage in 1945, and he started to experience strange things right off the bat. On his first night, it was as if a heavy furniture was being dragged from one side of the room to the other above his head. This surprised Eric because his furniture hadn't arrived at the vicarage yet. When he investigated, he saw all the rooms on the first floor were empty. In some countries, the first floor is the second floor. The ground floor is called the ground floor, and the floor above that is the first floor. I used to read a lot of books from Europe, and boy, was that confusing until I got it figured out. So when they say the first floor, they're referring to the second floor, for those of you that understand. Eric started to keep a journal with all of the strange happenings listed in it. Later, he bought a rocking chair and he placed it in the Borgvatten vicarage. One night, while sitting in the chair reading a book, he was pushed from the chair so violently he fell to the floor. When he tried again, it was as if he was being blocked from sitting in the chair. The rocking chair started moving on its own. From that night on, Eric was never allowed to sit in his own chair. 1947, Eric was talking about the ghosts to some fellow vicars at a gathering. A journalist picked up on the story. He asked for an interview. Who agreed? Eric agreed. Borgvatnet Vicarage became world famous. The newspaper Østland Posten published Eric's interview December 4th, 1947. In this interview, he talks about hearing footsteps while alone in the house, how candles would suddenly be blown out from some unseen force, and the fact that he sometimes felt as if he would bump into somebody while walking through the house, some unseen person. He told the journalist he would frequently hear footsteps in the garden that would cross over a wooden bridge, but that there was never anyone there. His interview was quite controversial, for clergymen never spoke of ghosts back in 1947. He said he always felt uncomfortable while in his office, the former expedition room, because he always felt as if someone was looking over his shoulder. Sometimes he even sensed that a person was sitting right next to him, which made work impossible. Eric eventually started to get used to all this activity in the house. The vicarage eventually became a bed and breakfast. I prefer a bed and lunch. That way I don't have to get up so early. The yellow room may have been the room in which Martha died. Guests of the bed and breakfast see shadows in the room, and sometimes people feel somebody is pulling at their clothes. Various guests have told of seeing a dent in the bedspread as if somebody was sitting on it. People who have spent the night in the blue room say they've been awoken by the sound of heavy furniture being moved around. There's also a ghost that likes to pull on the bed sheets in the middle of the night while people are sleeping. A small boy is spotted by folks in the room, only to watch as he vanishes. They think he might be the one pulling the sheets off. People have been awoken in the sound of a baby crying in the room. Sometimes people say they feel sad and depressed while in that room. Around the end of the 19th century, a 19-year-old girl who was pregnant without being married was supposed to have been locked in the room. It was considered a disgrace back then, and women were usually sent away to give birth, and the child was adopted away to some other family. The rumor of this girl was that she had been diddling one of the priests, and that's how she became pregnant. This might be just a tall tale, but it could also be true. Nobody knows for sure. When the child was born, it was either stillborn or it may have been killed. The baby was buried to the north side of the house, just outside of the pink room. Both mother and child are said to haunt this room. Sounds of screaming and a baby crying, as well as seeing a small shadow moving about the room. They also say they see a tall, dark man with a hat in the expedition room. There are strange images seen in the mirrors. There are sounds that come from the radiators that sound like singing, and the house has cold spots. You can book a room at the Borgvatnet Vicarage if you'd like. You can either rent one room or all of them. Personally, if I'm checking into a bed and breakfast, I'm going to be sleeping or eating, not staying up being visited by ghosts. I like to get sleep when I'm sleeping. I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. If you did, spread it around. Let other people know what they're missing. Tell total strangers while you're standing in line at the grocery store they should be listening to Strange Things with Chris James. If you have something you'd like to pass on to me or the listening audience, or you have a story that I could use in my next book, you can contact me at strangethings@arkanasa.com. Until next time, this is Chris James.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man who they say he murdered 3? Strange things have happened there. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.